Hello and welcome to our video on exposure bracketing for our HDR program. This version is HDR 10 Professional. I'll show you our problem, or the real trick with exposure bracketing. When we look at a normal image from the camera, you can see the areas with a lot of exposure, so where a lot of light reaches us, often get very white. The image burns out. Wherever it's very dark, in the shadows, we often see nothing at all. It's almost black. We can help counter that with exposure bracketing. Let's go one image to the left, an image back. That's an image of the same subject with two aperture levels lower, or an EV of -2. And now we can suddenly see details in the light. Likewise, we set an exposure that's brighter, so 2 levels higher, and here we see details in the shadows. If we now combine this series of shots into one image, which is exactly what the HDR program does, we create an HDR fusion. I'll apply the exposure bracketing on the image in the program. The program does its work, aligns the images with each other, and we get a resultant picture with reasonably good exposure throughout. We've details in the light shown here, and the details in the shadows up here. Maybe I'll choose another HDR style here, then it becomes even clearer how much information we really have here. If you want to change or edit this HDR fusion that's performed, fusion means merging these images, you can do that up here under Edit and Edit Exposure Bracketing, or right here on this image stacking icon. That brings you to the HDR fusion area. On the left side, you can see the 3 exposure images we were just looking at, the exposure bracketing, and to the right of that, we see the intensity or the masking level, how much the respective image is used in the fusion. Light means it's heavily used at this point, dark means it's not used at this point. Of course, we don't want to use the shadows in the dark image, but we want to take something from the details in the light, and that's them fused together. Here's the example of the light image again, where the picture is completely white and burnt out. The weighting is very low there, and the areas with the details in the shadows under the bridge here, the weighting is higher. That's then merged by the program and fused into one image. If you want, you can now select an algorithm in HDR 10 to apply. So, there isn't one correct HDR image. They can be weighted differently, and that's exactly what the algorithms here do. If we now take a look at the tooltips, the algorithms also tell us which motifs they're best suited to. Once you're happy with your fusion settings, if you wanted to change it, you can now switch to post-processing. It's worth mentioning again at this point, the exposure bracketing doesn't always have to be comprised of 3 images. It could be 5, 7, 9, 15, even more. HDR 10 Professional supports up to 250 images in one exposure bracketing, so you can make very large exposure bracketing with very accurate depictions of exposure. But you can also just load a single image, and the program then creates what we call synthetic exposure bracketing. Of course, that's never as good as doing full exposure bracketing yourself, but it is helpful. It's definitely possible to create an HDR from one image. Once you've configured everything, go to post-processing. That's the 2 gear wheels up here, and then you can select presets in the categories here, or switch to the HDR styles, or go to expert mode. But that's all covered in other videos that you can watch elsewhere. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.